What happens when one of Hollywood's most well-known comedians steps onto a late-night stage thinking nothing can go wrong, only to realize some boundaries are not meant to be crossed? Tonight, we take a closer look at the heated exchange that had everyone talking. It was the moment Kevin Hart's bold attitude came face to face with Jimmy Kimmel's quick wit, turning the night into a situation no one expected. Before we break down what went down, do not forget to hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts in the comments. This one is going to surprise you. The Jimmy Kimmel live show started off like it usually does. Jimmy opened with his standard mix of political jokes and light celebrity jabs. The audience responded with their usual laughter, and everything seemed normal as he got ready to bring out his first guest. But what followed became one of the most talked about events in late-night history. My first guest tonight is a comedian, actor, and someone who always brings the laughs, Jimmy said with his usual friendly tone. Please welcome Kevin Hart. The crowd cheered as Kevin walked out, but there was something off. His energy felt lower than usual, his smile seemed a bit forced, and the way he moved suggested he was carrying some tension. Viewers who were paying attention noticed it right away. The two greeted each other and sat down. Kevin adjusted his jacket with care, almost like he was trying to keep himself in control. Jimmy sat back, unaware that he was stepping into one of the toughest interviews he had faced. The crowd was still buzzing from Kevin's entrance, excited for the usual fun that comes with these two. Jimmy started things off in a friendly tone. Kevin, great to have you back on the show. You look good, you look at ease, how's everything going? It was a typical first question, the kind that normally leads to a joke or a mention of a new project. But Kevin's reply shifted the mood right away. At ease? I wouldn't say that, Kevin responded, his tone sharper than expected. It's tough to feel at ease when it feels like everywhere you look, someone's got an opinion about what you should or shouldn't be doing. The audience gave a few awkward laughs, unsure whether he was building up to a joke or heading into something more serious. Jimmy, staying calm and professional, tried to pull the conversation back into familiar territory. Well, you know what they say. Being in the spotlight comes with the job. Speaking of which, tell us about your new comedy special. I heard you cover some bold topics, but Kevin wasn't interested in following the usual script. You know what, Jimmy? That's the issue right there. Everyone seems to think they know what comes with the spotlight. Everyone's got an idea of how I should run things, what I should say, how I should deal with stuff. His voice grew louder, more intense, but not in a way that made people laugh. Fans could tell this was not his usual playful energy. The crowd began to realize this interview was not going how these shows normally go. The easy back and forth that makes late-night interviews flow was missing. In its place was something more serious. Something uncomfortable that was building quickly. It felt more like a confrontation than a friendly talk. Jimmy kept smiling, but his eyes began to show signs of unease. I mean, I hear you, Kevin, Jimmy said, trying to lighten the mood while still keeping control. Everyone seems to have an opinion nowadays, but you've always handled criticism well, turning it into brilliant comedy. That is one of the reasons people admire you. Kevin leaned forward, his body language shifting to something more firm. Handled? Well, Jimmy, do you even know what it is like to have every word you say pulled apart and judged by people who have no idea what you've been through? Do you know what it feels like when your own words get twisted and used against you by people who claim they support you? The room fell silent. The audience, who had come expecting light-hearted banter, now sensed something much heavier. Jimmy, looking slightly uneasy, tried to bring things back. Kevin, maybe we're taking things a bit too seriously, he said, his voice tightening. This is supposed to be fun, remember? Why not talk about something lighter, maybe share a story about your kids or that trip you posted on Instagram? But Kevin had moved past small talk. You want to talk about fun, Jimmy? You want to keep it light? Kevin's tone was pointed. Then let's talk about how you and every other late-night host like to make jokes about people like me when we are not around to respond. Jimmy looked confused, now clearly worried. Kevin, I honestly don't know what you're talking about. Where is this coming from? You don't? Kevin said, his voice now carrying a mocking tone. Let's talk about that monologue you did 3 weeks ago. You had a great time joking about my personal life, didn't you? You turned my real problems into a joke for your audience. Jimmy's face turned pale. He now understood exactly what Kevin meant. Kevin, it was just part of the show. You know how this works. We joke about everyone. It is never personal. It's part of the entertainment. Not personal, Kevin repeated, his laugh short and cold. Jimmy, when you joke about my marriage, my family, the personal things I am going through, how can that not be personal? When you take someone's lowest moments and turn them into laughs, how can you call that business? The audience sat still, fully locked into the unexpected exchange. It no longer felt like a scripted segment. It felt raw, something not seen often on a talk show. Jimmy struggled to keep his usual quick responses. The conversation had hit closer than he was ready for. Look, Kevin, if I crossed a line, then I apologize, Jimmy said, now sounding less sure of himself. But you have to see the other side, too. This is what we do. You also joke about others. Your whole career is built on pointing out everyday situations, relationships, family life, your own stories. There is a big difference between making fun of your own life and making jokes about someone else's pain, Kevin replied quickly. There is a line between comedy that lifts people up and comedy that breaks people down. And you know what the real difference is? He paused. It's power. You sit behind that desk every night with the power to influence how millions view me, my family, and my career. That is what you have. I do not have the same stage to speak for myself. The tension was rising fast. Both men had clearly moved beyond keeping up appearances. What started as a standard late-night interview was quickly turning into something that people would remember and discuss for years. Kevin's point about power lingered like a dare, and Jimmy suddenly understood this was not about one joke or a single segment. Kevin was questioning the entire system Jimmy was part of, and Jimmy, caught off guard, was clearly struggling to keep control in a moment unlike anything he had faced before. Kevin, that's just not fair, Jimmy said, his tone rising as his frustration became visible. You are making it sound like I came after you on purpose, like I have some personal issue with you. That is not how it happened. My writers showed me some material, I looked at it, thought it was funny, and I performed it. That is literally my job. If you have a problem with how comedy works, maybe you are in the wrong profession. But as soon as the words left his mouth, the entire mood in the room changed. Kevin's eyes lit up with a sharp anger that caught everyone's attention, and his reply hit like a punch. Wrong profession? Kevin's voice was low and sharp now. Jimmy, I have been doing stand-up long before you ever hosted a show. I have sold out stadiums, starred in films, and built everything from the ground up. Do not sit there and act like I do not belong here, just because I have the nerve to speak up when someone like you uses their platform to humiliate others. The word bully hit hard. Jimmy had always been seen as one of the more approachable, friendly faces on late-night TV. Being called a bully on his own stage might have been the harshest thing Kevin could have said. I am not a bully, Jimmy responded, his voice tight, clearly holding back anger. I do not go after people personally. What I do is comedy. And if you cannot take a joke, then maybe you need to grow thicker skin. Kevin rose from his seat, an action that instantly raised the tension in the studio. Some people in the audience gasped. Thicker skin? Kevin repeated. Jimmy, I have handled criticism for years. I have faced controversy, media backlash, and constant judgment about my life and career. But what I will not accept is pretending this is all harmless fun, especially when you get paid to make someone like me look like a fool. Jimmy stayed seated, but you could see the shift in his posture. His body was now closed off, more guarded. Someone like you? Jimmy asked. Are you implying that I target specific people? Because that is a pretty heavy thing to accuse someone of, especially without proof. Proof? Kevin said with a dry, humorless laugh. Jimmy, the proof is your show. It is every single monologue where you hit those below you instead of those above. It is every bit that makes fun of people already going through something. You will joke about celebrities dealing with real problems, but you will never say a word about the big names who actually run this industry. Kevin's words were becoming more pointed and more damaging. It was no longer just about being joked about. He was breaking down what he believed to be Jimmy's whole style of comedy, calling it weak and unfair. Jimmy's face was turning red now. His carefully held calm was starting to crack under the ongoing pressure. "You know what, Kevin?" Jimmy said. "You are here on my show, sitting in my studio, and you are taking personal shots at me. If you have such a big issue with what I do, then why did you agree to come on in the first place? Why not just decline the invite?" Kevin smiled for the first time since the interview began, but it was not a friendly smile. "I came because I wanted to hear what you had to say. I wanted to see if you would own up to the way your jokes affect people, if you would show even a little understanding of how your words can affect real lives. But instead you are doubling down, making excuses and trying to make me the bad guy for speaking up." "Harm?" Jimmy repeated, his voice slightly shaking. "Kevin, these are jokes. They are not made to hurt anyone. They are supposed to make people laugh, to give them a break from their daily stress. If you truly cannot see the difference between a joke and real harm, then I do not know how else to explain it." "That is exactly the issue, Jimmy," Kevin shot back, his tone sharper now. "You do not feel the harm because you are not the one it happens to. You cannot see the impact because you are shielded by your status, your money, and your platform. You throw jokes like stones and then act shocked when someone throws one back at you." The audience was completely drawn in by the honest back and forth. They were watching two well-known entertainers drop all filters and engage in what felt like a deeply real argument. Some in the crowd shifted uneasily, while others leaned forward, not wanting to miss any of it. "This is ridiculous," Jimmy said, shaking his head. "Kevin, you are a public figure. You chose this career. That means people will talk about you, joke about you, make comments on your life. That has always been part of being in the spotlight. If that is something you cannot accept, then maybe this industry is not for you." Kevin's reply came instantly and strongly. "There is a line between talking about people and being mean just to be funny, Jimmy. There is a clear line between clever humor and personal shots hidden as jokes, and there is a big difference between joking about those in power and going after people who are already under pressure." "I do not go after people who are struggling," Jimmy replied quickly. "I make jokes about celebrities, public figures, people who have chosen to be seen. That is not targeting the weak. That is just part of comedy." "Is that so?" Kevin challenged. "So when you joked about my problems at home, was that you joking up or down? When you turned something painful in my life into a bit for your monologue, were you speaking truth to power, or were you just getting an easy laugh at my cost?" Now Jimmy looked clearly uncomfortable. Sweat was forming on his forehead as he tried to find the right words in the middle of these serious accusations. "Kevin, I never intended to hurt you. If something I said upset you, then I apologize. But you need to understand that comedy has always pushed the line. It has always been about finding light in tough moments." "Do not try to teach me about comedy," Kevin snapped. "I know this world. I live this world. I have helped people laugh through their darkest days, but I have never done that by putting someone else down. I have never built my success on someone else's pain." Things had reached their highest point yet. Both men had passed the stage where they could step back. Jimmy glanced over at his producers, looking unsure, while Kevin remained standing, holding the room not just with his voice, but with his presence. The audience could feel that something completely unexpected was happening. The tension in the studio was so heavy, it felt like it could snap at any moment. It had built up to the point where everyone in the room knew something major was about to unfold, something that would not be forgotten anytime soon. Jimmy looked more and more uneasy, while Kevin remained standing, his frustration clear as he prepared to deliver what would become the final point in this exchange. "Do you want to know what the actual issue is, Jimmy?" Kevin's voice broke through the quiet like a sharp edge. "The real issue is that you stay behind your desk, surrounded by your writers and corporate backing, throwing comments at people while pretending your hands are clean. You have never truly faced the consequences of what you say, because no one has ever forced you to take responsibility. Jimmy jumped up from his seat, now matching Kevin's intensity. Accountable, Kevin. I am accountable to my viewers, my network, my sponsors. I do not need to answer to every celebrity who is upset about a joke I made. That is not how this works, and you know it. That is exactly what I mean, Kevin shot back. You believe that because you have a platform, a paycheck, and a whole system behind you, you can say anything about anyone. But what happens when someone pushes back? What do you do when someone decides not to stay quiet and take it? Jimmy's face turned red with anger, and any sign of his usual TV persona had disappeared. You know what, Kevin? You are right. I do not have to deal with this. This is my show, my platform. If you do not like the way I run it, you are free to leave. The challenge hung in the air for a moment. Then Kevin laughed, a sound that was part surprise, part sarcasm. There it is. That is the real Jimmy Kimmel. Not the polite guy you act like on TV, but the one who thinks he can dismiss anyone who disagrees with him. Kevin then turned to the audience, his voice carrying across the studio. This man sits at that desk every night, making jokes about people's problems, their hardships, their personal situations. He makes money off other people's pain while acting like he is their friend. But the moment someone speaks up, instead of listening, he wants them gone. He would rather shut someone down than take any blame. The audience was visibly split. Some nodded in agreement with Kevin, while others looked uneasy about how directly he was going after their host. Jimmy realized he was not just losing control of the conversation. He might also be losing his audience. That is enough, Jimmy said, cutting Kevin off. Security, please escort Mr. Hart off the stage. Kevin's eyes widened, a look of confirmation on his face. And there it is, everyone. When Jimmy Kimmel cannot win the debate, he has you taken away. When he cannot back up his actions, he uses his position to shut down criticism. To security. Guards approached slowly. Kevin looked at them, then at Jimmy, and finally straight into the camera. I will leave, Jimmy, but not because you told me to. I will leave because I said what I came here to say. Jimmy stood behind his desk, frozen, watching his own show fall apart as it happened. The crowd began murmuring among themselves, clearly unsure how to react to what they had just seen. Kevin walked toward the edge of as Kevin reached the edge of the stage, he turned around one last time. Jimmy, you had the opportunity to handle this differently tonight. You had the chance to show some understanding, a little responsibility. Instead, you chose to confirm everything I said about you. With that, Kevin Hart walked off the stage, leaving behind a silent host, a divided audience, and millions of viewers trying to understand what they had just seen. What would soon be called one of the most intense moments in late-night television history. Jimmy stood still for several long moments. The silence in the studio almost too much to bear. You could almost see him thinking hard, trying to figure out how to recover from what just happened. His usual fast humor was gone, and for the first time since he became a host, Jimmy Kimmel truly looked shaken. The audience seemed unsure how to respond. Some clapped in support of Kevin's bold move, while others sat quietly, uncertain about what they had just watched. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of Jimmy's visible effort to stay composed. Ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy finally spoke, his voice barely holding steady. I am sorry for what took place here tonight. This is not how we normally do things, and I want to assure you that we will return to our usual show format after the break. His words felt empty, like he was delivering lines that were never written, but it was already too late. In less than 20 minutes, Kevin Hart had not only disrupted Jimmy Kimmel's usual way of handling interviews, but had also called into question the entire format of late-night television itself. The argument had revealed something honest, yet uncomfortable. Something about the power balance between talk show hosts and their guests, about how Hollywood works behind the scenes, and the hidden cost of making entertainment at the expense of others. As the show faded to commercial, viewers were left with the image of Jimmy Kimmel standing alone on his stage, looking more exposed and unsure than anyone had ever seen him before. The same confident host known for quick jokes and light-hearted moments was now reduced to an uncertain man offering awkward apologies and calling insecurity. The reaction online would last for weeks. Clips of the confrontation quickly went viral, fueling discussions around comedy, responsibility, and what it means to have influence. In today's world, but in that exact moment, no one could look away from the rare sight of a late-night host being completely taken apart by the guest he had invited on. What do you think about Kevin Hart's decision to confront Jimmy Kimmel so directly? Was he right to speak out against how late-night comedy treats people, or did he take it too far? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe for more untold stories you will not hear from mainstream media.